Good morning, Yash. Good morning to the audience. The big week in AI this week. Local exit, Canva is buying Leonardo. We've got delays with Apple Intelligence. OpenAI does search. Zuckerberg's open sourcing LLaMA 3.1. And all SaaS opportunities are up for grabs. Stay tuned.
And Dror did a great intro. That's the last.
And I did a great intro.
All right, morning, Dror. Big news overnight. I think let's kick off with that news that we had one of our, I guess, one of the early stage companies in Australia getting bought out, which I think is a great news for them and great news for the ecosystem. Or is it? So it'll be good to kind of talk about that. Canva bought Leonardo AI, and Leonardo were at our event in Melbourne a couple of months ago, and so it's great to see, I guess, that progress. They've obviously had a fair bit of traction in what they're doing, and I think it's been undisclosed what the financial terms are around that, but I do think all of the 120 Leonardo employees will join Canva, and they'll still operate independently, but they can see that they'll become part of the company. And so background on Leonardo, founded in 22, and I think they were focused primarily on game asset creation in those days. And so they sort of expanded that out to now working with fashion and advertising and architecture and using their image design tools, which we've seen. I think it's really interesting. They have over 19 million users, and this is really about Canva's strategy around acquiring AI companies and building that capability. So I might just pause there and get your thoughts about that, Draw, just because I think this isn't going to be the first one of these in Australia and otherwise, and just what your thoughts are.
I think it's exciting news and great development. I think we need to start to see exits. It's kind of difficult to give a great like a super insightful opinion if we don't know the financials. So it's a little bit we need to do some homework. The news is very fresh, so we still need to catch up on it. So I'm gonna say that having an exit in that space in Australia so quickly is a testament of how hot this space is. It's you can, if you feel like being critical, you can say that oh well, we should see another big company, not see the big guys buying all the other companies. I think that's naive. I think we've got this 800-pound gorilla in town, and it's going to probably snatch every opportunity that heads its way. And I think that's a sign of a healthy ecosystem, and it generates cash flow for the next set of companies, and that's just the process of innovation. That's how it looks, right? So it's I'm very excited by that. I think it kind of validates a lot of the the stuff we've been talking in our show here, right? About the potential opportunities, the disruption, the challenges to incumbents, and so forth. I think the guys at Leonardo clearly did a great job. Again, the caveat in this, all right, the caveat is that we know that AI businesses are nothing like SaaS businesses in terms of the unit economics. The cost of SaaS is pretty much negligible, whereas the cost of every query you do against a large language model costs you at the level of cents, which means it's not unheard of that a company would have a great weekend with going viral and get a million people trying its product, only to see on the other side of it, hundreds of thousands of dollars of bills, because every query, every try is actually costs you something. So what we don't, and we only also heard this news that OpenAI is on track to be losing $5 billion this year. These numbers are astronomical. Like when Google was going through its kind of hyper growth, hyper scale phase, it was nowhere near burning so much cash. So the truth of the matter is that AI is just a different kind of fundamental unit economic business model with different unit economics. And that's a big caveat in every story that we hear until we kind of get the details and the facts of the matter. So I'll put that out. But other than that, having essentially Canva snatching up a competitor in the space that's kind of go vertical, go like deep into AI, it kind of proves the model. And I think we're going to see a whole lot more of that.
Yeah, look, it's their eighth acquisition. I think the second one for this year as well. And so I think they're going to integrate that into their Magic Studio. And it's good. I think one of the things we talked about actually a few weeks ago as well was the fact that Leonardo created their own model, and I wonder if that's also part of why the acquisition came about. They fine tuned a model that was on top of stability, and so yeah. Look, I think it's great that they've. So I think the thing as well to think about this is, would this have happened if they didn't have their own model and they were just building on top of something else? So they created a bit more IP, had a bit more defensibility about what they're doing, which made it probably more attractive for Canva as well. And I think behind all this as well, Canva are looking for that IPO. They're ramping up all their efforts around that, and so this is all part of them being a more valuable company. And I talk about this a lot. We have the incumbents and we have the startups. In some ways, Canva is somewhere, they're
No, Canva is they're not a startup by any stretch of that phrase.
yeah.
The fact that their investors haven't done a full exit yet, so I'll repeat, some of their investment they made a fantastic exits in the secondary markets and so forth. I think I wanna caution of calling, it's like calling Google a startup. Google is not a startup. You know what I'm saying? I heard somewhere a startup is like up to 50 people or 5 years or 50 million, something like that. Maybe the numbers changed since then, but I think it's a solid, it's a reasonable definition to start, being more meaningful with our conversations.
Yeah. So look, I think the important thing here is that if startups build the capabilities, they have the capability of being acquired, but there needs to be something unique in there, and that's their sort of focus on. In this case, around the user workflows, the way that works, the UX, and that community that they have, they clearly had a good product. And I think this goes to a bigger picture that they, I think, combined want to compete with Adobe. And so that's what's also interesting is I think that you can see that Canva want to take on bigger and bigger players and get more and more into that corporate space, as much as what we were talking to Leonardo doing exactly the same thing. So, we've been talking about this. It's interesting to see the strategy play out. So look, exciting for the Australian ecosystem. So did you hear Apple Intelligence is delayed?
Yeah.
There's a bit of a delay now, going to be in October.
Are you surprised?
No, look, I think they want to get it right, or as right as they can. And there's some interesting discussions I've been hearing about just Apple's strategy as well. Is they're not forking out as much money as the bigger players have been, and so they're sitting back and utilizing this and probably integrating those products more. So, while we talk about all that burn from OpenAI and from Google and everyone else that's spending money like there's no tomorrow, they've been spent relatively little cash in comparison, and will get a lot of the benefits, I think, when it is integrated into their features, into their phones, etc. I'm interested to see the overhauled Siri, and whether that's enough to take me away from my Samsung back to Apple, which I had for many years until I got pissed off with them. So
I think you hit it on the nail. I think it's exactly that. I think Apple can't afford itself to have a crappy integration of the AI into its kind of core services. And I don't think we're going to see, I mean, we may, but I don't think that's the main story. We may see an Apple equivalent of, ChatGPT-ish type. Here's a chat, go chat with it. But I think what Apple is obviously trying to do is integrate AI into its broad set of services and products and just make them better and smarter and so forth. So if you get that right, you're going to get us, and they're a position of incumbent. So can they really afford like OpenAI did, or stumble upon something and iterate? It's just not the Apple way. Google could have done it and get a massive wave of criticism at them. Meta is basically saying, "Oh, we're just going to open source it. We, good luck. We're not playing the game of like don't expect us to have really super refined products here." Apple is the premium product, super refined products kind of company. Premium stuff, expensive stuff. I mean, do you remember how bad it was for them when they launched Maps 10 years ago or so, and it was like a crappy experience? The guy lost his job. Like the top guy who ran that was fired, and there was a disaster for them. So imagine how bad it would look now if Siri, became powered by LLM and start doing the kind of nonsense that we've seen coming up from Google and Gemini and so forth. So I'm not surprised that Apple takes their time to try to get it right, so that their demos are good enough and that they can kind of because they built quite an anticipation here. So don't you think that's kind of what's going on here? Besides obvious technical challenges.
Yeah, I think we talked enough about it. I think they're holding on. I think it is for theirs to bring it into the mainstream. Whilst we feel like what we talk about is in the mainstream, I still think we're in a bit of an AI bubble ourselves, like amount we talk about it. So, and I know there's lots of people like that, and I meet a lot of people, but when I go and talk in the general population, there's a lot of misnomers and not as much intensity. So I think this would take it into the mainstream a bit more, just because it'll be easy to use on device, not too much hassle, and they'll charge all the providers for that, so they'll make money as well. So in some ways, interesting to not be the leader, but still keep the customers on your platform. So you had something about LLaMA you wanted to talk about.
Well, that was a big news of last week. In the last few days, was that Zook went on the offensive and did a whole lot of PR around their new 3.1 model, which is apparently 405 billion parameters model that they open source. And there's a new phrase in town. It's called open weights. So you can download the model, which literally is a gigantic file, 700 gigs on your hard drive with numbers. That's the model. I just want to explain what you actually downloading. Okay, it's a big file with numbers. That's called open weights. You don't get the source, which is also the training data, which is gigabytes and terabytes of scrapped websites, Twitter, whatever, in which they train their model. Anyway, so they're going on and saying this is like a Linux moment. Zook is giving an interview, and everywhere he can. A famous San Francisco-based Bloomberg media person is going on to his with him to Lake Tahoe in California, and they're going on their yachts and playing games, and they're making a whole lot of noise around it. You know what's interesting more for me about it? Is it so interesting that there's yet another open model there? Sure, it's interesting. We can talk about the downstream ramification of that in a second. But I mean, there will be 3.2 open source, 3.5 open source, and there's just going to be a whole lot of that coming soon. All right, so great. The actually interesting is that when you go and search for the actual interview where you're trying to get Zook's actual announcement, it's really hard to find. You go to Google and you search, Zook announced open source LLaMA video, and you get a lot of garbage videos that are AI produced on YouTube with those exact keywords in the last few days, and then you play them and they're AI produced. They are not videos that a human person created. And it's actually, to see that gives you a hint about the garbagification of the internet that we are going through. Google is dying because the world became better at spamming than Google became better at filtering. And Google economic incentive is not around filtering anymore. It's around maximizing ad revenue. So you just see that plays out. And you're trying to find a credible source of information these days, and you just get the spam around it. So I'm not surprised. So this actually was more interesting to me than the actual announcement by Mr. Zuckerberg. And I urge you to check it out. Those videos, they're just horrific to watch. They are basically it's like TikTok on steroids, powered by AI, generated by AI. It's disgusting.
Well, look, I think it's interesting you say about so much junk or what do you call garbification?
Garbagification.
Garbagification. Nice. That can be a draw word. Look, I was at an event last night here with a guy called Dom Price, who's the work futurist, he likes to call himself, at Atlassian. And he was talking about where are we going in the future of work and how we adapt. And one of the things he talked about, and it's a manifesto about the future of work, was interesting, about the fact that we have lots of content, but not context. So people have so much content, and we're all hoarding lots of data and content, but we don't have the context around it all, and people are looking for the insights, and we're overwhelmed by that. And so really around how do people get through all this garbage, like you're saying in some cases, and some of the garbage we hoard ourselves because we think we might need it. And that's one of the challenges of the future of people working. Look, there was a video that I did see as well that came out yesterday. I think Jensen Huang, NVIDIA CEO, and Zuck having a bit of a chat. So, like you say, he is doing a bit of a media round. And yeah, I thought that was interesting, just talking about where they see the future of AI. And so, Meta have had, they did point out that Meta have these deep roots in AI, including developing PyTorch and some of the things they did initially early on. And so I think the thing I took away from that was really around them want to be bigger players in there, and talking about the future of AI assistants and virtual assistants and doing all those things. But the other part of theirs is to utilize that big spend they've had in VR and AR and trying to incorporate all of this within that space. So I think that's where they sort of see that in terms of the smart glasses and where they see their future. And it's probably they spent a bit of time in the metaverse, which didn't quite work out yet, but maybe that this will be the other part of it. And then Jensen sort of talked about NVIDIA's focus as well, and theirs being a bit more around the obviously around the chips, but also around the robotic side of things and the hardware. And obviously that's what they do, but I think them building that out even further, I think is quite interesting. Look, why don't I just finish that and just go look, and look, I think Jensen Huang obviously talked about their focus being on the graphics and the AI and robotics, and yeah, I think they tried to, I guess, do a bit of a shout out to each other in the video. So it was interesting, but yeah, I guess they're all on a bit of a media
tour. So look, I think pretty much. I'd like to congratulate ourselves in this little show and podcast of us that we are, getting it right again. Look, the game that's going on here is kind of as we expected. It's actually playing out. It's actually, in a way, beautiful to see. Okay, so here's my take. NVIDIA their job is to sell their products. So the more people spend on training, the better for NVIDIA, point blank. So there's been an article from Sequoia that there's a $6 billion AI question. The amount of money that companies spent on training and the amount of money invested through into that it's a money pit in order to fund the next generation of AI is just going through the roof, and the returns are not there yet. Again, because the fundamental unit economic of AI is not the same like SaaS. It's like try to bake it into a generation that grew and think I'm gonna get 10 million users. That's it. I'm successful. Sure, but if the margin on those 10 million users is so minuscule, you're not going to be as successful as you thought you were in the generation ago in SaaS era. Point number one. But the biggest player, who's the biggest player? The NVIDIA. It's like, yeah, sure, go for it. Try it. Like append a new platform shift, and so forth. Just as long as you buy our chip. I'm not surprised by NVIDIA's position. But I think that what Zook is doing is fundamental. He's saying you want to utilize a model that costs billions of dollars to train. Like here, go do it. You don't have to do it yourself. And now, where's that going to head us towards? So it's going to head us towards many things like Leonardo, that they could actually take a model, train it a little bit, improve it, and become a very valuable company. So if you a framework to think about what's coming next, which I like, is to think about looking at a big company these days, and they have between 400 to 500 SaaS apps. That's kind of the average. All right, each one of them could be done using Excel or Oracle or Outlook. All right, each SaaS you see, there's a sentence I like to say: every spreadsheet is a startup in disguise. I mean, all those SaaS products are really cool and amazing. Fundamentally, they are like a database in this cloud and some UI in the browser, and you can minimize that and says I could do it with a spreadsheet, but you don't. And it's a vertical product, and it sells great, and it solves the problem. So suddenly we can the cost of changing each one of those type of companies is dropped because Zuckerberg is launching an open source model, open weights model. All right. So we can expect that every one of those kind of 500 or so, 1,000 or so kind of SaaS products that are bought by the market will go through its own, Canva moment. Am I going to buy this competitor, or am I going to be replaced by that competitor? If you're wearing a hat of a venture capitalist that's focused on AI, you get very, very excited when you see that the base cost for innovating, which is the model, all right, the open sourcing of the model is dropping. When you know that each one of those thousands of SaaS products can be, going to go through their Canva moment. They either going to buy or be replaced by a few competitors. And what about all the other 10,000 ideas that we can now do that we couldn't even think before in the previous age? So I think and then now we have a validation. Here's a local exit. So I think the future is bright for AI focused VCs. That's my takeaway, Mom.
I'm in 100% agreement. So no, I think it's good. Let's move on. Look, speaking of that, we're also seeing that once again. We had our 10th Dazed and Diffused event, our first one in Canberra, where I live in theory, and yeah, it was good. I think we had another sold out event. 3 really great companies. We had Merry Tech, who are a legal AI company that showed the crowd on what they're doing. Dragonfly Thinking, showing a way to use AI to be able to think about a problem and think about the risks and rewards and all of these things, which are interesting. And Haast, which was around compliance. And I've had a bit of feedback from people in the week, and it gave people a real vision of how do we apply this technology, because everyone sees this future, and we're seeing things in the creative space, or people generating images or music or something that they may or may not relate to in their daily life. But this was showing people how people, early stage companies, are applying this to work. And like I say, this is, to me, having people come along. People are really trying to learn, and I had quite a lot of people come up to me later, even yesterday at another event I was at, and just sparked thought. And that's what's great to be part of, and seeing, exactly to your point, this is the time to create those companies and to have companies coming together and create, spark those thought processes for people who sometimes aren't even thinking about starting a company. And so I think it's great to see that happening in Australia more and more, and people embracing it. So well done to us and to Tim from Time Under Tension. And yeah, it continues on. Our Sydney one's coming up next. And look, that's all I want to talk. I think it's a great week in AI for Australia. But look, another week in AI. Well done, Dror. We've had a bit of a time off, just doing lots of other things, but we're back in business, and let's catch up next week. See you later.
See you later.